Good morning, everybody. A very warm welcome to the Facebook program of Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, Ministry of Culture, Government of India. Today, we are bringing a special program on the occasion of Navaratri celebrations. We have two programs today. First will be a discourse by Professor K.S. Radhakrishnan, former chairman of Kerala Public Service Commission and former vice chancellor of Sri Shankaracharya Sanskrit University of Kaladi. Sir will be talking on the importance of Navaratri celebrations in Kerala. The talk will be followed by a violin concert by Vidwan Sri C.S. Anurup. First, we start with the discourse by Professor K.S. Radhakrishnan, who needs no introduction, a world-renowned orator, academician, philosopher. Sir will explain to us the importance of Navratri festival in Kerala, how it is related to the Indian culture, how important is Indian culture, and what supremacy we have over the other cultures of the world. Sir.
Hello. Let me at the outset express my sincere thanks and gratitude for having invited me to share some of my experiences with the audience on the Navaratri festival, especially in India. Navaratri happens every month. It is not the peculiarity of 1 month alone, but it happens so. It begins with the Prathama of the Shukla Paksha, which means the first day after the black moon. Then begins the beginning of the full moon, and the first 9 nights of the full moon, period of the full moon, have been considered as Navaratri or the 9 nights. And in every month this happens. But there are 4 such Navaratris. That means the celebration of the 9 days in 4 occasions. That is very important, which is related to the season, which is connected to the change of seasons. For example, if it occurs in the beginning of the Sharad Ritu, then it is known as Sharada Navaratri. It's a technical term. Sharada. Sharada means white, the most purified, the most important, and that should be celebrated. That Navaratri is the Sharada Navaratri. And now we are celebrating the Sharada Navaratri. There's a change of the season. And there is Chaitra Navaratri and Ashada Navaratri and Vasanta Navaratri. These are the 4 important Navaratris, means the 9 days after the black moon, we are moving to the full moon season. And the first 9 days, not 9 days, but 9 nights, they include the Navaratri. And throughout India, Navaratri has been celebrated as a festival of freedom, righteousness, liberty, and welfare of the universe as a whole. Navaratri is meant to submit ourselves for the welfare of the universe as a whole, not for the welfare of the human beings alone, nor for the welfare of my family, my friends, or I myself, but it is meant for a person is dedicated to work to submit himself for the welfare of the whole universe, including a piece of dust and stardom. So that is very important. And in Kerala, it is being celebrated in a different way than what it has been celebrated in the other part of India. Kerala Navaratri has been celebrated by all Hindu people, and nowadays it has been extended to the Christian community and rarely to the Islamic community, and almost all people in that sense wanted to celebrate the Navaratri festival as the beginning of the activity of literacy connected to a kid, the first day of the entrance of literacy. A child who is dedicated to get education in schools, first they submit themselves to the Vijayadashami day of the Navaratri, and it is a customary practice that a guru who also is dedicated for the enhancement of the cultural values, the human values, and the literary values of Kerala state to lead the child to the world of letters. And in Kerala, we submit ourselves to the Saraswati. Of course, it is a fact that Navaratri is connected with the goddess Durga. Hence, it is known as the Durga Puja, of the adoration of the goddess Durga. And there are innumerable forms of manifestations of Durga according to the traditional literature available in India. Durga has got many forms. Durga is a multi-dimensional force that exists in the universe and functions as the part and parcel of the functioning of the universe. In a sense, Durga is the essence of the universe. In a sense, she is the driving force of the universe. In a sense, it is she who finds herself in macro and micro forms of manifestation of the universe as a whole. As it says that it is latent in the universe in the form of motherhood. It is latent in the universe in the form of the ocean. It is latent in the universe in the form of the mountains, oceans, rain, the sun, the moon, and almost all the entire manifestation of the universe. So she is to be respected and she is to be adored according to the traditional belief of the Hindu culture. And she represents the weapons, the instruments which we use for the daily life, to pull on our daily life. There are many such instruments, including the instruments which we use for plowing, the other instruments which we use to pull on our daily life in connection with the functions discharged by an individual in the society. But in Kerala, the importance has been given to the literary side, the cultural side, the educational aspect, and it is the initiation of the child to letters, culture, literature, art, science, etc. So, the Navaratri in Kerala has been considered as the festival of initiation of the younger ones to the cultural life. What is meant by culture? That is the first thing. And what is meant by art? Because Vijayadashmi has been considered as the day of initiation of a child to art and literature. See, in India, especially by the legendary aesthetician Bharata in his Natyashastra defines art as the fifth work of art as the fifth Veda. It is the fifth Veda. There are the four Vedas. And Veda means the compilation of the statements of experience narrated by the rishis. And it is believed that Veda Vyasa compiled all such statements or aphorisms of the rishis, and he edited such aphorisms into four classes. They are known as the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda. Again, each Veda has been classified into four parts: the Samhita, Aranyaka, Brahmana, and the Upanishads. And there are specifications to be attained by a person to learn and practice the Veda according to the Vedic traditions. Not everyone is though everyone is eligible, not everyone is competent to learn the Vedas. A set of criteria has been designed for a disciple who wants to learn the Vedas. And if we apply the set of criteria on the human population, there will be only very few who are competent, who are eligible and competent to learn the Vedas. And the learning of the Vedas is meant for the attainment of moksha. Moksha has never been designed as a posthumous award or the meritorious work he has done on earth. It is not a posthumous award, but moksha is a state of experience or affair that is to be experienced by a person in flesh and blood in this life itself. How is it possible? According to the Indian tradition, when a person enjoys ananda, there is no equivalent word in English to connote the meaning of ananda. Hence, I am using those Sanskrit terms as they are, because Ananda it includes happiness, it includes what you call peace, harmony, non-violence, etc. All these are the ingredients of the experience of Ananda, and the state of experience of Ananda of a person concerned has been defined as moksha. So it's not something that is to be attained after the death of a person, because nobody knows what happens after the death. There is no specific narrations of a person after death, what happens. That may be amounted to the level of speculation, and so I'm not concerned of so speculative statements, because nobody has ever said anything of his experience after death. So we cannot be sure of that. After death, we must be able to enjoy the ananda, and that can be the what you call the moksha, or the meritorious deed he has done on earth may be awarded by or someone or something else, and that state of affair can be termed as moksha. I don't subscribe those views because they are illogical, impractical, and have not been certified or testified by anyone who died. So I'm not subscribing those views. Then what I subscribe is that it is the experience of Ananda in this life itself. And there is happiness, there is pleasure, there is harmony, there is peace, and there is non-violence in the experience of Ananda. Such a state of experience of Ananda is the aim of aesthetic discourses. Every aesthetic discourse, whether it is aesthetic creation, aesthetic appreciation, whatever it may be, it is meant for the experience of the Ananda by the person concerned. That is, a creator of work of art has to experience Ananda in the act of creation. That means in the aesthetic discourse, as a creator of work of art, at the time of that creation, he or she must be able to enjoy Ananda. And if a person who appreciates a work of art, then he also must be able to enjoy Ananda. Since there is no basic difference between Ananda that is being enjoyed by the creator and the appreciator, we cannot say that creator is much superior to the appreciator or appreciator is lower in the rank of the creator, but both of them enjoying identical experiences of Ananda, and that level of experience of Ananda is moksha. That's why Bharata says that this is meant for what? For the attainment of Ananda. That means it is the fifth Veda. Why he created the fifth Veda? He explained it properly. And he says that, see, the other four Vedas are meant for only those persons who are eligible and competent to learn the Vedas. But according to Bharata, everyone on earth, it is not concerned with the right of the human beings alone. Don't think that, especially in Indian context, don't think that the right to enjoy happiness, ananda, can never be confined on the human beings alone, because it is the Ramayana that vehemently explained the right of a piece of rock for the attainment of moksha. The narration of the Halya moksha incident in the Ramayana specifically says that, as it has been generally misunderstood by the people, that the attainment of moksha has been an exclusive right of the human beings alone. Then Valmiki said that no, even a piece of rock is able to attain moksha if it is being properly treated. So the issue is that the attainment of ananda is universal. The experience of moksha, according to Bharata, is universal, and hence it is universal. And since it is universal, then what happens is that we have to find out a universal Veda, as Veda is meant for the attainment of moksha. So the fifth Veda, the work of art, or the aesthetic creation, or the aesthetic appreciation, or in modern sense, the aesthetic discourses, have been designed for the attainment of moksha to those who are eligible but not competent, since they are not equipped to learn the Vedas in the systematic manner. Though they are not equipped to learn the Vedas in the systematic manner, they cannot be excluded from the sphere of the attainment of ananda. And work of art has been, or the aesthetic discourses has been designed for the attainment of moksha for those who are not eligible for the learning of the Vedas but are eligible for moksha. He prescribed that the work of Natyam is for the Abuddha. It's a technical term, Abuddha. Buddha means not an intelligent person alone or not an intellectual person alone, but Buddha is a technical term which means that a person who is able to experience and assimilate the principle of a phenomena when he experiences it. I shall explain it. When a person experiences the law of gravitational force when he sees the fall of an apple, such a person is known as a Buddha. Usually, we don't experience the law of gravitational forces that is latent in a piece of apple. But here what happens is that when an apple falls, a scientist perceives or experiences the law of gravitational force which never falls at all. And that gravitational force is inherent in me and in a piece of dust. So a person who experiences the universal law that governs a phenomena, when he perceives a phenomena or when he experiences a phenomena, is known as Buddha. But the work of art, according to Bharata, is meant for Abuddha. Abuddha means those who are absence of the quality of a Buddha. There is the absence of the quality of Buddha, but those people are eligible for the attainment of moksha, and he introduces the fifth Veda for them to attain the moksha. So, work of art or the aesthetic discourses have been designed by the legendary aesthetician Bharata for the layman to experience a supreme bliss through the aesthetic discourses. So, aesthetic creation. And in Kerala, what happens is that Navaratri has been treated as an initiation for the experience of Ananda by the layman. So, it is the day of the initiation of a child to music, to dance, to literature, to art, and to whatnot. So all these forms of aesthetic creations and appreciations are meant for the attainment of moksha. That's very important. And I think that This is the peculiarity of the Indian aesthetics alone, and elsewhere you cannot see that. The aesthetic discourses have been considered for the attainment of moksha. Never. And Plato in Greek philosophy has denied the role of aestheticians because they are the substandard stuff, as they are being ruled or controlled by the emotions rather than reason, and they are able to make all emotional troubles in a well-organized society which is being ruled by the philosopher king. So he said that a republic that is being ruled by the philosopher king cannot entertain the role of a poet or an artist in it because they are being driven by the emotional content of human mind. So they are excluded from the ideal society by Plato. And his disciple Aristotle, though he admitted the role of the aesthetics, especially the tragedy, in the process of the catharsis that can occur in the mind of the people, that has never been equated to the highest form of experience by him. No one ever says that an aesthetic experience is equal to the experience of the supreme, that means the supreme god or whatever it may be. So what it says is that this aspect of the aesthetic discourse is very important when we think of the celebration of the Navaratri. See, what I'm telling is that the Eurocentric aesthetic traditions, right from the time of the Greek period to the present one, they never give importance to the aesthetic discourse. At least they never think that the aesthetic discourses are equal to the experience connected with religion, because salvation or liberation is the contribution of religion according to the Eurocentric traditions. But in India, the work of art is meant for the attainment of moksha, the highest form of experience, which can be attained by human beings living in societies. This is very important when we consider the role of the Navaratri festivals. And in Kerala, it says that when you enter in the field of education, in the field of literature, art or culture, whatever it may be, your aim should be the attainment of Ananda. And since Ananda includes the non-violence, peace, harmony, happiness, etc., it gives the warning to the student and guidance to the student that the aim of education, the aim of aesthetic discourse is to establish welfare to one and all. It can never be confined to the welfare of the human beings alone, no, but it should be concerned with the welfare of a piece of dust and the stardom. It is never meant for the human beings alone, no, but a piece of dust has equal right to with a human being to get the highest form of experience. Just because of the fact that we are not able to know how a piece of dust experiences the world, we cannot deny that they are not experiencing it, because then we are using a very too wide application of the logical principles, because we cannot know whether a piece of dust enjoys it or not. We cannot know. Just because of the fact that we cannot know, we cannot deny that there is no such experience. Such experiences may be there. And we should be epistemologically liberal to admit that there are certain forms of experiences, especially in the learning process, which may not be accessible to human beings. The plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, the birds kingdom, see, they have got their own language system, their own mode of expressions, mode of appreciations. And the Navaratri celebrations reminds the human being that you as an artist, as an educationist, as a writer, your commitment is to all those phenomena, not to human beings alone. Again, this is a sharp difference between the Indian concept of aesthetic discourses and of the West. The Western tradition, especially the Eurocentric tradition, believes that the aesthetic discourses and its appreciation can be anthropocentric. Anthropocentrism means man is the measure of all things and man is the center of universe. Everything in the universe should be interpreted in the interest of man. And if something is useful to man, then we have to admit that this is useful to all. And we can discard the right of the other beings. This aspect of anthropocentrism has been endorsed by the Eurocentric religion, the Eurocentric science, and the Eurocentric philosophy. The Eurocentric religion believes that, especially in the Old Testament, it says that man is created in the image of God and entrusted God to rule the rest, his thumb over the rest, for and on behalf of God. Who said it? Man said it. Man said that he alone has been created in the image of God from dust. Again, man said that he has been entrusted by God to rule over the rest of the universe. What a pathetic statement it is. Because before making such a statement, nobody ever dared to ask to a piece of dust, do you have any objection against this statement? Nobody did it. And according to the scientific tradition of Europe, it believes that man is at the top of the evolutionary process, and being the highest in the evolutionary process, he enjoys a special status over the other manifestations of the universe. So he is supreme. And Aristotle, again, let me quote Aristotle, he defines man as the rational animal, and all others and all other beings are animals or plants or birds. And rationality is the special gift of man. Since he enjoys that special gift, he is the master of the universe. Hence the declaration that man is the measure of all things, declared by a previous philosopher to Aristotle, has been endorsed by the Greek tradition as it is. And Aristotle also endorsed the view that man is the measure of all things. This is what is meant by anthropocentrism. And this anthropocentric approach of aesthetic discourse is totally unacceptable to the Indian traditions. The anthropocentric approach of the system of education also is totally unacceptable to the Indian system of education. This aspect has been brilliantly explained by Mahatma Gandhi in his Hind Swaraj, the first book he wrote against the onslaught of the Eurocentric thoughts over the Indian traditions. It is the first literary reaction against the Eurocentric onslaught. And he wrote that the English education is not the only one mode of education. There are other forms of education, especially India has got a unique form of education, which is far more better than what it has been taught by the Eurocentric tradition, especially the English system of education introduced in India by the colonial masters. So what I'm telling is that we have got a very different tradition. And according to the Indian tradition, the aim of aesthetic discourse is to establish a harmony, universal harmony, realizing the right of a piece of dust, recognizing the role of a piece of dust in the maintenance of the universe as it is. You have no right to discard anything as trivial and something as very important. And you cannot have the right to place that man at the center of the universe and giving him the absolute power to rule over the rest. No, this is absolutely wrong according to the Indian systems of thought and Indian systems of aesthetics. So the Indian systems of aesthetic tradition aims at what? Aims at the welfare, harmony of one and all. And this is the basis of the ecological balance that is to be kept by everyone who engages in aesthetic discourses or intellectual activity or educational activity. And the celebration of what you call this The celebration of Navaratri is meant for the propagation of the philosophy of harmony and all inclusiveness. It should be all inclusive. That's why in his well-known Chicago address, Swami Vivekananda declared before the Eurocentric audience that he represented a religion that has a culture that has no word equal to its exclusion, but it contains only inclusion. So, an Indian by nature it should be inclusive, unlike the Eurocentric people. Philosophically, aesthetically, culturally, an Indian by nature should be inclusive. He cannot exclude that the other is hell. No, the other is part of me. The other is the partner and part and parcel of my own existence. I cannot exclude him. I cannot leave him that no, you keep away from me because you are hell. The other is hell is the most notorious statement I have ever heard from a philosopher, and that statement has been made by Jean-Paul Sartre, a French writer and a philosopher, of course. How can a person be an aesthetically important writer when he declares that the other is hell? But Indian tradition says that you can be a partner to the aesthetic discourse only if you admit that the other is heaven, as there is heaven in me and in him. There is a sea change between these two aesthetic traditions. So in Navaratri festival, we want to communicate this aesthetic tradition, the tradition that is capable to establish eco-harmony in the universe. So what I'm telling is that the aim of the aesthetic discourse according to the Indian tradition is the establishment of eco-harmony, and we are initiating our kids to that direction. In the beginning, it was the celebration exclusively meant for the Hindu people. But now there is a lot of change. A plethora of cultural institutions began to start the initiation of the students to literature, art, culture, and education. The media houses, the government managed cultural organizations, the temples, and even the churches. They initiated their kids to the new world of aesthetic discourse, education, intellectual discourses, and whatnot. So, at this point of time, I think that despite the differences prevailed in the social and cultural fields, this is really a hope of what you call a silver ray, hope of silver ray, that says that we can have certain common space in culture. So the second point is that, which I would like, the first point is that, I have mentioned the first point that the aesthetic tradition, the aesthetic discourses in India has been dedicated for the attainment of moksha. Moksha is a state of ananda that is to be experienced by the person concerned in this life itself. It is not a posthumous reward. Number two, then everything should be dedicated for the attainment of that ananda. Number three is that ananda includes happiness, pleasure, harmony, peace, and non-violence. So, number four is that the aesthetic exercises or discourses must be directed to that direction. When we direct ourselves for the attainment of peace and harmony, we have to get harmonized with the universe. And that aspect definitely gives the eco dimension to all these activities. And this is what we propagate when we celebrate the Navaratri festival in Kerala. And it has attained, nowadays, it has attained a universal acceptability. I think that now the time is over. And thank you very much for giving me a very patient hearing, though I do not know whether you were patient or not. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for such a thought-provoking discourse. The lecture has given us a new dimension to think about the quality and supremacy of Indian culture and how important is the Navaratri festival in Kerala. Thank you, sir, once again. This program is organized by the Regional Center of Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts at Thrissur. I take this opportunity to thank our guiding force, our member secretary, Professor Sachidananda Joshi, other team members, our Gaur Saab, Ranganekar Saab, our Shamaji, Anita Suri, my dear friend Achal Pandya, Abhijit, Santosh, and all others who have supported in arranging this program. Now we will have the violin concert by Vidwan Sri C.S. Anurup.
Namaskaram, one and all. In connection with this year's Navaratri festival, we are presenting Devi Kritis, a violin concert by Vidwan Sri C.S. Anirup, accompanied on the Mridangam by Dr. K. Jayakrishnan, and on the Gadam by Uragam Ramakrishnan, and on the Morsing by Gopakumar Paravur. We are extremely thankful for giving us such an opportunity to the organizers of Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts, Ministry of Culture, Government of India. Thank you.